Hello and welcome to this game review. We'll have a look at a game in which white played perfectly. And generally, I would suggest analyzing games in which we had some mistakes, at least, because from mistakes we can learn quite a lot. But of course, from looking at games that we played very well, we can look at examples of what we did right and try to replicate. So, in this game, it started as a London system. Generally, I wouldn't suggest playing systemic openings because then we are then made not to think in the opening and just play the same moves every game. But okay, knight c6, already kind of a mistake because in d4, d5 openings, all of them, black and white, both have to use their c-pawns, either to defend the center or to attack the center. So same goes for white. And after knight c6, this knight is not putting enough pressure on d4, and the knight itself doesn't have any way any way forward, and it's blocking the c7 pawn. So e3, e6, and c4. So this is a nice move. Usually, if we're playing the London automatically, white would play c3, but this move would make no sense. c4 is a very nice move, attacking the center, dc, and bishop c4. Now white has both bishops developed. Also, white has two pawns in the center against black's one, which gives him long-term potential to have a big center. So now both sides develop. And after bishop d6, black does have the threat of doubling our pawns and creating an isolated pawn on d4. So we should avoid that. And a question arises as to how to avoid it. White decided on bishop g5. Perhaps more accurate was the nice move bishop g3, which is very typical for such positions, going back with the bishop, with the idea that if black takes, we will take back with the h-pawn, and now our rook is also in the game. So bishop g5, this is fine, h6, bishop h4, and now black gives this check, but this check doesn't really make much sense, as it just helps white develop his knight, and the bishop was already standing quite well. Instead, black should have probably opted for e5, which is the typical break in such positions. Black really needs to open up this bishop on c8, and now it could go to f5 or g4, and also now this knight makes sense on c6, because without e5, it's not really doing anything towards d4. Now, white decided on knight bd2. Maybe more logical is to put the knight on c3 in the center, as that's where knights typically belong. But okay, knight bd2. Black decides to just give up the bishop pair, which wasn't a very good idea. And after queen takes d2, now white has the bishop pair. He also has the big center, and also white has a lead in development because black still has these undeveloped pieces. And all of this amounts to a pretty significant advantage for white. So queen d7, and here white makes a nice move, bishop d3. Usually we shouldn't move around the same piece twice. In the opening, since we still haven't castled, probably more logical was to just castle and then play on the c-file, maybe bishop b5, create a weakness on c6. But okay, bishop d3. Now black plays g5, and it's hard to suggest anything for black because he can't really develop his bishop. Maybe b6 at some point should be played. After g5 now, since black does not have the dark squared bishop, then he will have quite a lot of problems on the dark squares, namely this diagonal. And after b6 and rook c1, white is actually just winning due to all the threats with knight e5, bishop b5 creating a pin here. So bishop b7, and now knight e5 was played, which is the best move, after which white is actually just winning. Bishop b5 is also tempting. After queen d5 and queen b4, for example, white is also winning here as well, as black cannot really castle kingside, and if he castles queenside, then after queen a4, the knight is attacked, and if it moves, a7 and c7 are both dropping. So instead knight e5, black takes, bishop takes, and suddenly black does not have a way to basically defend this knight. If king e7, then rook takes c7. It was good to put a rook on the half-open file. Otherwise, queen e7, also rook c7, and if queen d8, rook c7. And here black is at least not losing a piece yet, but his position is horrible due to white's very active pieces. Instead bishop g2 happens, but now both pieces are attacked. White could have just taken here as well, or rook c7 as well. Queen e7, but now white is a piece up, and he exchanges some bishops for knights. This is a little bit soft, maybe bishop c2 with the idea to play queen d3 checkmate. This is a bit hopeful, but it worked in the game. Probably most objectively best was to attack the king like this to create a weakness on g5, maybe take on c7 at some point, but of course at this point a lot of moves win, and this worked, the battery on the diagonal, and black did not see the checkmate, and it happened. So basically a very well played game by white, and there's hardly anything to criticize.